to the cloud. Cool. So now we're recording. Wait. Okay.
About another art world. So yeah, this is coming from the reading group we did on another art world, and I think one big question for me was, I think a lot of people are bringing up the idea of scarcity, and I know you bring it up in the text as well. You know, you're talking about the art market and how, like, maybe in a way that, like, the reason something is art is by creating scarcity. You know, so someone gave the example of, like, some artists decided to have dinner together and they said that this is art, but it only became art after a museum actually had an exhibit and they were having dinner in that museum. And once it became like a scarce thing which you couldn't just see, that's when it becomes art. So I was just curious about this scarcity principle. And is that the only thing that makes, I guess I shouldn't put it that way, but that's how I'm thinking about it. You know, it's like, is that the only thing that makes art in our world, you know, according to you?
I think it's several questions in ones that you ask, but if we talk about scarcity, this is a really, really main point. So from my point of view, you're right. Scarcity is the definition of market. If you have abundance, if you have plenty, you don't need to sell and buy. You know, you just take and go and use and so on. So in the situation of art market, if you don't have scarcity, you don't have art market, but you still have art. It's like thinking about dinners and food. We all will have dinners, even if we don't need to buy food. We will just maybe have a different type of dinners. We will not have, you know, some fancy dinners to impress somebody. I don't know. We will develop a different habits of having dinners, because the very fact that the food is not available as much as we want, or any food as we want, is forming our habits. And the same things about art. So art is an essential part of human life. It just will be art without art market.
Got it. So it's still art. It's like even before the art market, it is still art. So there's something more going on in that way.
Yeah, it will be like, maybe you don't need to go to museum to have dinner to point out that the dinner itself could be an art project. But you can have a potluck, like, you know, Native Americans has this elaborate rituals of potluck that involve food as well, but they don't need museum to be a framework in which whatever they do would consider to be something to preserve, something to admire, something to learn from, and so on and so forth.
Got it. And that took me to my next question. I think, I know there was also some discussion around social media, and, you know, nowadays there's it's actually so easy to create, you know, what they call content. You know, I can be on something like Instagram or even go on TikTok and do something that's kind of essentially art. You know, there's people doing different types of dance forms. You know, different types of memes come up and so on. And in the article, on the text, you mentioned that there's this kind of hierarchy, right, in the art world, where it seems that contemporary art is at the pinnacle in some ways, like the ultimate kind of realization of of value, I guess. So I think it made me think that maybe in that case, then, is it like the stuff that's actually quite freely available, like you see on social media, where that falls? You know, maybe it's at the very bottom, perhaps, by this logic, you know. But even if it's at the bottom, what's interesting is, well, I guess we can get to that later, you know, but this is something I was thinking about, that maybe is it like this kind of content that they talk about in social media, is that like at the bottom or something, you know?
Yeah, it's my favorite art critic and philosopher, Boris Groys, was saying that in nowadays everybody is an artist also because everybody, artists and galleries and curator and a museum owner, because we all have like a Facebook pages or Twitters. So what are we doing there? We are curating content. We might not even write anything ourselves, but by just retweeting or posting YouTube links, we already acting as curators do in the normal galleries and museums. And not all galleries and museums are very elaborate, great places. Some of them is like miserable, abandoned, 2 links every month or less. So yeah, I think this is a bottom-up content production that could look with all this abundance. So it's so much of the content providers. Everybody has the page that they maintain. It's much more content providers than content consumers. In this case, you have a reverse market. Like people want to be like, liked and read. They want to distribute content for free, but it's not enough people who wants to consume. But it's also, we should think about how this content frame, and that's why what we're trying to figure out in Museums of Care is very important, because most of these social networks, they are commercially run and they're set up to extract a free labor and make people consume, but not consume relationship as they claim, but consume product that they sold. So if it would be a different framework in which people will be encouraged to communicate and to produce social relationship, then maybe the content that they provide wouldn't be only like, photographs of their kitchens or whatever else, or like naked ladies. So I don't know. So maybe it would be something meaningful. And in any case, even with all of this pressure of commercialization and all kind of crap that social networks, owners of the social networks are doing to people, like spying on them, trying to manipulate political content and so on and so forth. Even with that pressure, we know that most of the social movements were coordinated actually through these commercial networks. Even under this pressure, humans are still humans. They're still trying to connect meaningfully to each other, So
That's true, and I mean, I think it's exactly what you said around commercialization, which I find interesting. Where I think, like, first, I think a lot of social media platforms say that, oh yeah, we're here for people to express themselves, but then they also like like the customer is actually not the users, but it's the advertiser who's the customer. So even here, where it's supposed to be like a freely accessible sort of platform, there's still, I guess, some logic of advertising or commercialization, as you said, that's operating. So I guess the question is, how do you escape that logic, but you can still keep the good things of these types of platforms?
So we should just try to create our own platform, I think. And I was in the beginning of Russian blogging when so Russians very early joined LiveJournal. LiveJournal, I don't know if you know this name. LiveJournal was one of the first blogging platform that was set up by American student Brett Fitzpatrick. And he was still a student in high school, and he created this with I think his mom was working there, and like sister, I don't know, a couple people. And then suddenly he has like a huge amount of users in this livejournal.com, and he promised everybody that it will be open source, never will be any censorship, never advertisement, everything will be like, just like a communism forever. So he got a lot of people to help him, and it was a lot of Russians there. So like it was Russian programmers who were developing code for free. It was a lot of people who were helping to I don't know, do all kind of technical support and customer support and explain people and so on. And I think it was official budget of the project was $1 million a year, because, for example, I was living in the US at that time. I was using a lot of the service, and I just paid $20 a year just because, I wanted to be nice. It wasn't a lot of money, it was just like more friendly gesture. And so people like me, who was paying $20 a year, collected to the student, high school student, his mom and his sister, and another, like, I think he has like 7 employees, $1 million. So it was a very, very cool project. Like, everybody was happy. And then this fucking Brad Fitzpatrick sold this to the company called Six Apart, a commercial blogging company. And then it's just, first of all, it's killed the project, because the Six Apart wasn't about like business, you get money, you pay salaries, everybody's happy. It was about expanding and fundraising. So they just get a lot of managers, a lot of PR people, blah, blah. LiveJournal immediately become unprofitable, started to lose money. But also they introduced a censorship. They fucking introduced a censorship because they started to sell it to advertisement, and they started to crack on all kind of things, including like, I remember they were like starting to ban this community of the breastfeeding moms because they were thinking that, you cannot show the naked breast. And then they started, like, it just was like really humoristical and insane. But slowly at the end, a couple years later, they sold it to the Russian oligarch, because there was a lot of Russian users there. And so LiveJournal, that still exists in Russia, it's not so popular anymore, but it's like become the tools of political manipulation. So whenever it will be election in Russia, they will close LiveJournal for like 1 week before the election for the technical maintenance, so people would not be able to organize themselves. It's so obvious, like this is basically like, it's a graveyard for the content production and distribution, any of this type of, frameworks. Yeah, and so in the Museum of Care, we should try to avoid it if if we will be able to. We should make sure.
I think what stood out for me was how like the censorship came. I think originally it seems to have come for like money reasons, right? Because they wanted to be more profitable. And because, like typically normally when we think of censorship, we think it's done for political reasons, So like this happens in India as well, where sometimes before an election or randomly social media gets shut down. Or like right now in India, TikTok has been banned for political reasons because of the relationship with China, But like now, as you're mentioning on this platform, I think even before they became really big, they started censoring things. Maybe that's because like whoever was like they were, like if they're trying to get more funds or sell themselves to a different platform or a different company or like an oligarch, like it helps to create like an image that it's this like a sanitized, like safe platform where the content is, it's free but like not too free. So like even before there's a political angle, like a country political angle, there's like the money related aspects which are already leading to censorship, which I find interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting question, but David started to read these books and by Israeli economists. What are their names? I forgot. I should remember and post it. We should actually maybe read them in the reading groups. So the major things is we train to think that money is a capital, and capital is a production and so on. So this Marxist things, but they were basically saying that the capital is not about financial capital; it's about power. So in this case, it's we shouldn't divide politics and money. It's just about power and control. And it's very clearly like when you have the structures that is about power and control, then you will get censorship. And it could be many different reasons. So one country, they will just, think that the people have to believe that the green are yellow and vice versa. And in another country, they have to maximize the profit. But they can have 5,000 different reasons, but they will have the same outcome for us, who's using that. So, Yeah, it was unavoidable. The moment they stopped being open source, the moment they got into this framework that is centralized and run by some outside powers for the interest of outside powers, then whatever this interest would be, the people inside was just, here to serve. Yeah.
That's
So
true. That's true.
in the art world, coming back to our initial conversation, it's very unlucky that it's set up in this way. I think it's diverse. It's a lot of people. They all have their different agendas, and to my knowledge, art world is the place that a lot of really great people inhabit it, because it's provide them with much more freedom than you can get in any other places, including academia, I think, and of course, commercial world or even NGOs. But fundamentally, the existence of art world in a way as it is now, it's very problematic, and it's a reflection of the major problem of the other part of the society. So
That's quite true. I had like one last question. Speaking again to like just the art world generally, because as one thing you said, it's a place where you can really get that sense of freedom as an artist, which you don't really get elsewhere. And maybe it's kind of similar with academics as well. I'm thinking about what is the importance of skills when it comes to art, in your opinion? So because I was thinking of, on the one hand, you have contemporary art, and I don't know much about contemporary art, if I'm honest, but I'm thinking of someone like, like Jackson Pollock, they make him really famous, like in the mainstream. And, everyone jokes that, all he was doing was just throwing some paint on canvas and it sold for millions, But then there's also like people who are like really skilled. They spend like decades before even creating one artwork. And do you think skills, the importance of skills gets diminished in contemporary art, or they still play an important role? And if you're thinking of a world where we are going beyond the art market, what role will skills have? Because of course you want it to be democratic, everyone should be able to participate, but like something like a classical dance needs you to have certain amount of skills, I guess, so like that's something I've always thought about, like how does that fit in?
Mm-hmm. So it's a very interesting question. And in the beginning of this essay, part one that we read last time, it was this notion that it was from the David's article, and he just came and inserted this paragraph, and it's so brilliant. And it's this notion that the anonymous industrial worker who produce things, the idea of this factory worker and the idea of the romantic genius artist as a concept was born at the same time, as a kind of contradictory to each other. So when we're talking about the skills, we have to see how the skills are, and the idea of like artistic skills are developed. So for example, in 17th centuries in Dutch small paintings, it would be studios that belongs to the artist, but it's not necessarily the artist himself who would draw the paintings, but he would definitely know how to draw. He wasn't a salesman, he was an artist. That was his guild, his profession, and he definitely has had the skills. But then it's become people like Van Gogh, who is or Modigliani, whose skills become a part of their identity. They draw like that because they were like insane, for example. So it almost was like an extension of their body, and their uniqueness as a human being was their artistic skills. And they are like embodiment of the idea of being genius. If you look at the art history, or if you go to a museum, you will be told by the museum guide. But then now artists more and more becoming managers who doesn't need to acquire special skills, because we all run in projects, and the projects require so many skills that you cannot be good at everything. You cannot be good in design and video editing and writing text and do this and that. So, but you, and most of all, you can be contemporary if you have access to resources, like so, and that's a manager skills to have grants and, you know, whatever, like to attract rich people who give you money, so on and so forth. So now it's a kind of, if we are talking about the world as being a factory, on top of the world is a factory owner or somebody who's running or CEO of this corporation. So, and that's how we like change the idea of who is the artist. It's the first part of your question. The second part was for the future. Yeah. So if we don't have an art market, if the people are not pushed to do this and that, if you're living in the world where the resources are available, so anybody indeed could become an artist or could do dinas as an art, and they don't have any restrictions or any demands from outside. Yeah, I don't know what will be a role of the skills in this case. For example, remember Adrian Bohr in RepRap. So if you can print everything and you can download, you know, to your computer all kind of 3D models. So yeah, so my feelings, but I don't have a strong opinion about that, that the idea of the skills itself will also evolve, and the skills will become more like a part of the social relationship. For example, if I want to relate to somebody or to some group, and I need to develop some skill in order to be part of this relationship, then I will try to do it. But the skill would not be for sale, or it would not be something that just because I have the skills, I have like the this and that position in the social hierarchy, because we assume in the world where, like, you know, we can have, you know, whatever. So that would be my answer. What would be actually your answer in that question?
So actually, as you're speaking, it made me think, yeah, like, I think one thing it reminded me of was something that David once mentioned, of like, you know, like the idea of a teacher, you know, like there's like, to be a teacher is like to have like a kind of power that defeats itself, right? Because you teach someone, like as long as they're a student, you have like a power over them in the sense that you know things that they don't. But once you're done teaching them, you become like, you defeat your own power because now they know everything that you know, right? So I think in that sense, like, you know, I guess skills can be less restrictive than just pure scarcity, you know. Then the other thing which I realized was like how much, when we think about skills, as you're talking about, you know, like as if like nowadays artists are putting on like the hat of a manager, you know. I also feel like maybe similarly, when we think of skills, we already assume like this division of labor, you know. So like a skill by definition has to be about, you know, video editing skill or like writing skills or managerial skills. But like, what if you go even one step back, and maybe that's like the radical potential of art, right? Like it's like shattering all of these boundaries. Because, you know, you have like the idea of the Renaissance man, like I don't know why it has to be a man, but that's how they say it. It's like Renaissance man is like competent in everything. That type of person is someone who, you know, becomes great at video editing, also becomes good at writing, also becomes good at, you know, speaking more than one language, maybe learn some music and so on. Maybe the reason they can do that is because they don't recognize the differences between video editing, writing, music, etc. to begin with, you know. So if we figure out a way to make people realize that there's just skills like in the abstract, you know, there's no boundaries as such, that can also be a way out, maybe, you know, of like the current situation where you like, you know, then you don't have to be a manager anymore. But what you do need maybe is resources, because to be able to pursue all these skills at the same time, you still need resources and like, you know, backing of people who are supportive of what you're trying to do, which it's very difficult.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, thank you so much. It was very cool.
Okay. This is great fun. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.